Let me tell you something that is a fact. Ohio State is the number one team in college football. And part of me wants to say that it isn't close and that the Buckeyes are on their own separate tier compared to the rest of the nation. There's a lot of arguments that they are on a different tier than Georgia and Alabama, and there are no ideas that would say that Ohio State isn't better than Clemson or Michigan or anyone else in the country outside of Georgia and Alabama, who'd be the only competing forces with this current Buckeye team, and I think Ohio State is still better than them. My current top four, and I will be releasing my top 25, and I'll be talking about it on my live tonight, but I'll be releasing it in a post today. My current top four is Ohio State 1, Alabama 2, Georgia 3, Michigan sitting at number 4. That's my top four. Out of those top four teams, Ohio State, I think, has separated themselves from the rest of the group. I think Alabama and Georgia, if this top four we were to call Tier 1, Ohio State would be Tier 1A. Alabama and Georgia would be Tier 1B. Michigan would be Tier 1C. And part of me is even tempted to say they'd just be straight up Tier 2 because of their bad performance against Indiana. But at the top of Tier 2, or maybe Tier 1C. But Ohio State's number one, and I don't think there's really too much of an argument for it. I'm disappointed that Georgia's number one in the AP poll, that Alabama's above Ohio State along with Georgia in the coaches poll, but those polls really don't matter. I shouldn't even care or be disappointed at all, because those polls don't matter. ESPN's FPI, the All-State Playoff Predictor, 538's Playoff Predictor, which even those have plenty of their own inaccuracies, those matter more than the AP and coaches poll do. Those matter much more because they have analytics behind them, they have computers working behind them along with human beings, and combining the best of those both worlds, well, makes our life easier and just gives more accuracy. Ohio State is 2 in the FPI, and we'll talk about more of the statistics and points per game and all of that in a few minutes here. But number 2 in the FPI, they're number 2 in the AP poll. They're definitely going to be, in my opinion, top 2 when the college football playoff rankings release, maybe even number 1 there. And they've just looked the most impressive. They just have. That ever since that Wisconsin game where they just destroyed. They destroyed Wisconsin 52-21. They beat Michigan State by 29 points just a few days ago. They beat Rutgers by 39 prior to that. They smashed Toledo. They had somewhat of a rough outing against Arkansas State. They beat a Notre Dame team who at some point looked fraudulent, but now Notre Dame with Drew Pine at quarterback seems to be crawling their way back up, and I think they're now a top 25 team again. So Notre Dame, three-game win streak. Wisconsin, they're a 500 team. Rutgers is a 500 team. Notre Dame is, by all accounts, now Ohio State's most impressive win by strength of opponent. But what Ohio State has done to Wisconsin, Rutgers, Michigan State, Toledo, they just blow out teams repeatedly, back to back to back to back weeks. And looking at Iowa and what Michigan did to Iowa on the road, and now this Iowa team has to come to Columbus October 22nd at noon, that very well could be the 5th straight blowout in a row, non-competitive blowout for the Ohio State Buckeyes. This team is fantastic. This team has CJ Stroud at quarterback, and CJ Stroud currently leads the nation in touchdown passes with 24 and QB rating with 94.8. He also has a 207.6 passer rating, which I think Grayson McCall last year maybe had a higher passer rating or a similar one. I'm going to double check that right now. But if not, that would certainly be the passer rating record for the NCAA. Grayson McCall had a 207.6. CJ Stroud also has a 207.6. So it would be a record tied with Grayson McCall if the season ended today for passer rating. CJ Stroud is also 12th in passing yards with 1,737 passing yards, and he's only thrown 3 interceptions. those interceptions, one was thrown against Michigan State, one was thrown against Rutgers, one was thrown against Wisconsin, and the one against Michigan State you can't even blame him for. That was the receiver's fault, running a bad route, not his. He, right now, is the only person who should be in the Heisman conversation in the QB section. The only one. And there are probably some other guys who are certainly under the radar. I mean, you still have Will Anderson. You have Bryce Young if he is healthy this week and get his numbers back up. You have Blake Corum at Michigan. You have Caleb Williams. You have mostly offensive players. There doesn't seem to be a defensive guy who really is standing out too much. But CJ Stroud, out of all the offensive guys, he's standing out exceptionally. He's also completed 70.6% of his passes and averages 10.9 yards per pass. Nearly 11 yards are gained every time he throws the ball. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, this offense is loaded. Jackson Smith-Njigba hasn't been healthy the entire year. Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams have had their own bout with injuries. CJ Stroud has mainly been the constant of this team, along with the offensive line. And he's excelled. The offensive line's excelled. He's only been sacked 4 times. The run game has excelled. It's been much better than last year. And with Emeka Egbuka, with Marvin Harrison Jr., Julian Fleming finally being healthy and getting some starts, this Ohio State team is they're unstoppable on offense, and their defense with Jim Knowles is so much better than it was last year. And let's use that to lean into Ohio State's resume so far. Ohio State's number 1 in team efficiency and game control, according to ESPN. They're second in Football Power Index. Number 1 in team efficiency. And they're not number 1 by a hair either. You look at team efficiency on ESPN, Ohio State's 94.6 in efficiency points. The next closest team is Alabama with 90.6. There's a solid 4 points that separates Ohio State from Alabama in efficiency. Specifically, you go to offense, and offense is more important than defense in the modern era of college football. We know this. Ohio State had a 98.3 efficiency marker for offense. That's number 1 in the nation. TCU has the second most efficient offense in the nation. They had an efficiency score of 89.2. So Ohio State's offense, drastically more efficient, more talented, better executing, better coached by miles compared to any team in the country. Their offense is not just a tier above. It's like 2 tiers above the next closest offense, in not just in efficiency, but in performance too. They lead the nation in scoring offense, with scoring nearly 50 points per game. And those numbers, believe me, facing Iowa and Penn State, those are more defensive teams, but they're going to face Indiana, Northwestern, Maryland. Those will be games where Ohio State is likely to score north of 50 points. So Ohio State could end the year off scoring, maybe 50 points per game or north of that. It's crazy. And then in defensive efficiency, you go to Ohio State. And defensively, Ohio State is top 20 in defensive efficiency. They're below fellow Big Ten teams Penn State, Michigan, Illinois, Iowa, and Illinois' defense is extremely underrated. And Ohio State's is too. No, their defense isn't as good, in my opinion, as Michigan, Penn State's, Iowa's, or Illinois'. But it's getting closer and closer, and that combined with their out-of-this-world offense, that's hard to stop. This defense can stop the run. They can be clutch when needed. And these are simple things. These are things that could be taken as small. But they couldn't do those things last year, and they still won 11 games. So now with a much better defense, with an offense that can be more balanced, that doesn't have to pass as much or be as one-dimensional because they no longer have problems at O-line, they have more experience in the run game, the offense is better, the defense is better, and let me tell you something. This team's number 1. Their resume so far proves it. They have the 4th best strength of record, the 71st best strength of schedule. Now, because of ESPN's FPI and the fact that most SEC teams are ranked very high. They're probably overall overrated as a conference, even though I would still say they're the best conference in the nation. Alabama has the best strength of record. Tennessee is the second best. Georgia is the third. So by strength of record, the SEC by all means is up there. Ohio State's strength of record is fourth best, though. They have the 71st strength of schedule. And even with those weaker strength of record metrics and strength of schedule metrics compared to SEC teams, they have the highest game control ranking and the highest average in-game win probability, which I don't know exactly what that means, but from what I can see from the explanation that ESPN gives, having the highest average in-game win probability rank means that if you gave Alabama Ohio State's schedule, for example, they wouldn't have done as well. They wouldn't have scored as many points or won by as many given Ohio State's schedule. So that means by the schedule Ohio State's been given, they've done the best out of, according to ESPN's calculations, they've done better than any other team would have given Ohio State's schedule. And that speaks volumes. And again, it's just a calculation. We will never know because no one's going to play the same schedule against the same teams, because that's not how college football works, obviously. But the Buckeyes are impressive. They're a solid team. And I think that they are going to go 15-0, and they're going to win it all. They're peaking, and I've said this in previous videos before, so it might sound redundant, but it's not. Ohio State teams peak. Even last year's team that lost to Michigan was peaking. They were peaking entering that Michigan game. The difference was, for the first time in ages, last year's Ohio State best wasn't as good as Michigan's best. That's why they lost to Michigan last year. Even they were still peaking, and you saw that in the week prior against Michigan State. You saw it in the Rose Bowl against Utah. They are peaking right now. Their defense is getting better weekly. Their offense is getting better weekly. Their special teams is. Everything about this team, they are on the uptrend. They've been rising in ESPN's FPI. They've been rising in efficiency metrics. They're getting better and better. And them already being number 1 or number 2 or at least top 10 in multiple categories, and they haven't even finished peaking, that should terrify every team in the nation. Every team. And there are a few teams that even stand a chance to beat or even compete with this Ohio State team. In the Big Ten, that's Michigan in general. It's also Penn State, and if Penn State has home field advantage, and this year they do, it's very good if you're a Penn State fan. For other teams, it would be Alabama, it would be Georgia. I think Clemson, Texas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, maybe Utah or USC would have chances depending on the day, or they'd have a better chance than everyone else. But it's really Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, and then maybe Clemson, maybe Penn State, if you gave Clemson or Penn State home field advantage, that have a chance to compete and maybe beat this Ohio State team. And going forward, Ohio State on their schedule, they have Iowa left. Then after Iowa, they have Penn State, then Northwestern, then Indiana, then Maryland, then Michigan, and then whoever they face in the Big Ten championship game in the West, of which I have no clue who's going to win it. None. Illinois, Purdue, Nebraska, Minnesota, even Wisconsin. I mean, there are so many players that are still alive in the race for the Big Ten West Division slot in the championship game. Ohio State should go 13-0, and then they should go 15-0 and win the national title this year. And that's kind of a mid-season prediction for the Ohio State Buckeyes. They're the number 1 team in the nation. And if you disagree, comment your thoughts down below. Same if you agree. And thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button and support this channel, a channel that covers mostly Big Ten football, but also reviews college football as a whole. Thank you all for watching again. Make sure to check out my merchandise that I just released early this week on Monday. The link to that will be down below in the video description. And if you're listening via Spotify, make sure to follow the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.